Sometimes a horror movie villain is so impressive that your instinct might be, let's use them again and again and again, looking at you, Freddy Krueger. And then there are those that only appear one time, which can, in fact, lead to their popularity. Now, we've already done a list on 10 horror movie characters who only appeared once, so make sure you check out the original video and article. In the meantime, I'm Sean Ferrick for What Culture Horror, and here are 10 more best horror movie villains who only appeared once. Number 10. The Wheezing Demon, Insidious Chapter 3. If you're looking for a movie franchise that is chock-a-block with creepy demons, then you'd be right on the money with Insidious. The series, created by Lee Whannell and James Wan, features plenty of horrible entities like the Lipstick-Faced Demon, the Bride in Black, and the Key Demon. But it's the underrated villain of Insidious Chapter 3 who gets a spot here. This demonic entity, known both as the Wheezing Demon and the Man Who Can't Breathe, is a malevolent spirit from the further, and boy is he one hell of a creepy guy. If you hear the sound of wheezing, then you should be afraid, as it means this demon is near. He possesses the bodies of his victims and tries to make them take their lives so he can keep them in the further forever to suffer alongside him. Yikes. The character is a clear metaphor for disease, death, and suffering, which obviously makes him unbelievably creepy. His design reflects this, and it is eerily human and emits a feeling of pain and sickness. Although this villain only appeared in one Insidious movie, he still ranks as one of the franchise's scariest big bads. Number 9. Rose the Hat, Dr. Sleep. Making a sequel to Stanley Kubrick's iconic The Shining adaptation was no easy task. Be it Stephen King writing the book or Mike Flanagan directing the movie adaptation, nothing was guaranteed to succeed with Dr. Sleep. But while not everything about this movie is perfect, there is one thing that stands out, and it's the terrifying Rose the Hat. Rose O'Hara is the leader of the True Knot, a group of semi-immortal beings who feed off children gifted with the Shining. How do they get sustenance out of these youngsters, you may ask? Why, they torture them to death and feed off the steam released by their abilities. As you do. As the leader of a child-killing vampiric cult, Rose is, naturally, a bit of a handful. She's a relentless, pitiless monster who performs awful deeds and hunts down the movie's protagonists, the grown-up Danny Torrance and Abra Stone, with a frightening obsession. She's a master manipulator who lures people in with her friendly nature, only to strike at them with no remorse. Watching her work her victims is like seeing a spider circling its prey. You feel awful for anyone trapped in her web. Number 8. Chop Top Sawyer, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Everyone knows and loves Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. Yes, this iconic villain is the face of the franchise, so to speak, but it's time to give some love to his brother, Chop Top. Robert Sawyer, also known as Chop Top Sawyer, is the secondary antagonist of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. For pure transparency, yes, this is not an amazing movie, but the whole thing is worth watching purely to delight in the ridiculous scenery chewing of this villain. This twisted member of the Sawyer family was in Vietnam during the events of the first film, where he suffered a grievous head injury that forced him to have a metal plate lodged into his skull. He is a crazy hippie-like hillbilly and, as runs in the family, a brutal cannibal. There's so much to love about this character, from his creepy design to the bonkers performance given by Bill Moseley. But this is not a villain you need to take too seriously, as he is there to bring black humour into the movie. The only other film Chop Top was involved in was an unreleased movie named All-American Massacre, which would have seen him take the leading role. It would have been a wild ride had it seen the light of day. Number 7. Vera Cosgrove, Brain Dead, Dead Alive. The overbearing mother is a villain architect that can really get under your skin. Characters like Margaret White in Carrie, Pamela Voorhees in Friday the 13th, and Erica Sayers in Black Swan are excellent examples. But Vera from Peter Jackson's Brain Dead goes the extra mile by being overbearing and turning into a monster who tries to kill her son. That's sure to make for an awkward Christmas dinner. Vera starts this movie off in a stellar way, if her goal is to make you dislike her. She's a domineering parent who wants her son Lionel to dote only on her, getting frustrated when a young woman steals his attention away. However, things get even worse after she's bitten by a Sumatran rat monkey, and the zombie shenanigans ensue. She kicks off an undead invasion of Wellington, yet Lionel still feels responsible for her, taking care of her in her zombified state. Of course, things turn into a bloodbath after a while as Lionel must hold back the zombies and battle his out-of-control mother. The movie concludes with a gore fest of a third act, which sees Vera grow into a giant, bloated creature brought to life with some grotesque practical effects. You certainly won't want to celebrate Mother's Day with this monstrous lady. Number 6. Lless Stone, The Loved Ones. Young love truly is a beautiful thing. Your first kiss, your first relationship, and the event it all leads up to, prom. It's a magical moment in a kid's life. Unless, of course, you reject someone's invitation to the dance so they kidnap and torture you, which is way less romantic. This is exactly what happens in The Loved Ones, as viewers are introduced to the devilish Lless Stone, a demented young girl who does not handle rejection well. She handles it so poorly, in fact, that she kidnaps the protagonist and holds a prom of her own, complete with music, lights, and torture. What kind of things does this girl do? Well, she pours bleach into the protagonist's voice box to destroy his vocal cords, carves her initials into his chest, then pours salt on the wound, performs lobotomies on her victims, and is in love with her father. All in all, a pretty gross package. She is a terrifying villain with a passion for the worst things life has to offer. Thankfully, she only appears in one movie, so no one else needs to go to prom with her. Number 5. Dr. Satan, House of a Thousand Corpses. Many horror fans argue that House of a Thousand Corpses is Rob Zombie's magnum opus, despite being his first feature-length flick. Whatever your thoughts are on the man's movies, honestly, any feeling is valid, there's no denying it's a sick and twisted horror, and one of its sickest features is the terrifying Dr. Satan. This demented doctor is referenced throughout the film as a devilish medical practitioner who performed horrendous experiments, but it's uncertain whether he's fact or fiction. In the end, the heroes discover that he's more than an urban legend after encountering him underneath the Firefly house. His time in the film is incredibly brief, but his gnarly design, looming presence in the narrative, and sheer freakishness are enough to leave a permanent impression. Unfortunately for him, the movie's sequels, The Devil's Rejects and Three from Hell, went in a far more grounded direction, focusing on the murderous antics of the Firefly family in a gritty and believable tone. As such, this over-the-top baddie did not come along for the ride. He did appear in a deleted scene in Devil's Rejects, where he killed a nurse played by Rosario Dawson. However, this was cut from the film as Zombie felt he was out of place with the flick's tone. Number 4. Frank Zito, Maniac, 2012. Lots of horror movies try their best to get inside the mind of a serial killer, but not many do it quite like this 2012 remake of the 1980 movie of the same name. This film gets inside a killer's head in a very literal way and is a compelling character study of a monstrous character known as Frank. Now, anyone who has seen Maniac will know that it takes the unconventional approach of telling its story through the eyes of the villain, but that is meant in the truest of ways, as the film is shot from his point of view, forcibly placing you into the shoes of this deranged murderer. Frank is a stunning character as he constantly switches from being a vulnerable loner and romantic hero to a psychopathic monster committing a litany of sins. The film is fantastic, especially if you want a challenging experience. However, it was a one-time flick, so you will never see Elijah Wood's Frank again. Number 3. The Tooth Fairy, Darkness Falls. The horror genre is willing to try and make anything scary, which is why audiences have seen spooky movies about Santa, leprechauns, random animals, and more. Still, The Tooth Fairy feels like such a bizarre leap for a horror story, and what makes it even weirder is that it works, as this one-time villain is genuinely scary. Darkness Falls' antagonist is the spirit of a woman named Matilda Dixon, otherwise known as the Tooth Fairy. She lived hundreds of years ago and used to give gold coins to kids when they lost their teeth, until she was killed by the townsfolk on suspicion of child murder, despite her innocence. She cursed the town, and her legend inspired the story of the Tooth Fairy. Matilda continues her Tooth Fairy work in the modern day, but anyone who looks at her becomes her victim. This villain is freaky as she brings a twisted side to the legend. Her design, which includes a white mask and flowing black robe, gives off the vibe of a sinister entity. You'll also have the image of what's underneath that mask seared into your memory once you see it. Matilda only appears in one movie, but she does enough to make you glad you've already lost your baby teeth. Number 2. Ellie, Evil Dead Rise. It's time to return to looking at mothers turned monsters, and Ellie from Evil Dead Rise is a very different kind of mum to Vera from Braindead, but just because she had good intentions for her kids doesn't make her any less scary once the blood starts flowing. Ellie, played by Alyssa Sutherland, is the mother of a small family and absolutely loves her kids. However, in typical Evil Dead fashion, love means nothing once the Necronomicon and the Deadites enter the fray. The iconic malicious spirits possess Ellie, and she goes on a rampage, with her delightful youngsters being the prime targets. This villain is unrelenting and insanely creepy. Her horrid smile, desire to kill, and freaky makeup combine to turn this once likeable mother into an absolute nightmare. As such, you're constantly afraid for her kids, and let's just say she does a lot of things that will make you wince. There were no other Evil Dead projects in development at the time of recording, but even if there were, Ellie wouldn't be coming along, as her story was wrapped up in a neat bow. This is a villain who only needed one film to become your new biggest fear. Number 1. The Gemini Killer, The Exorcist 3. Following up on the original Exorcist movie was a task the first sequel failed at by a large margin. But ask any horror fan and they'll tell you that the third Exorcist movie deserves a lot more credit than it gets. Owing to the nature of this list, you won't be surprised to learn that much of that is because it's got a banging villain. The Gemini Killer, inspired by the real-life Zodiac Killer, is a fear-inducing antagonist played by Jason Miller and Brad Dourif. He was a ruthless serial killer who was executed at the same time Damien Karras died in the first movie. As The Exorcist 3 reveals, the demon Pazuzu transferred the killer's soul into Karras' body, but he was unable to take full control until 15 years later. This villain gets your blood pumping in every way imaginable. He is utterly unpredictable, as one minute he'll be soft-spoken, and the other he'll hurl out throat-ripping shouts. You truly never know what you're going to get. Part of what makes this work so well is the dual performance from Miller and Dourif, with the former playing the possessed body and the latter playing the spirit of the Gemini Killer. As far as horror sequels go, this one is pretty good, and this one-off villain proves it. That is everything for our list today, folks. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Michael John Day for writing the original article. Make sure you check that out over on whatculture.com. You are awesome and wonderful. Look after yourself. If you only appear in my life once, please know that I am glad that you did. You are great. You are brilliant. Have a bloody good week. Thanks very much.